Kentucky was trounced by Alabama on Saturday, and while there might be a lot of Big Blue Nation fans out there pretty upset, I think the Wildcats might actually end up being okay.
You are Locked On Kentucky, your daily podcast on the Kentucky Wildcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, what's going on, Big Blue Nation? Welcome on into Locked On Kentucky, your daily Kentucky Wildcats podcast. I'm your host, Lance Dawe, and on today's episode of Locked On Kentucky, we're going to be talking about Kentucky's massive loss to Alabama, some of the things I took away from that game, the positives, the negatives, and then I want to look ahead to this upcoming SEC slate because I really do think that despite all of the bad things we saw against Alabama, the Wildcats might actually end up being okay. I'll explain in detail later on. We'll also get to an update on Sam Leavitt, the Arizona State quarterback transfer. The Wildcats battling it out with LSU possibly for his services. Also going to give you an update on a variety of other transfer portal guys, some of that have committed, some that are looking elsewhere right now. Give you a football transfer portal update later on in the show. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. You can download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Thank you guys so much for making Locked On Kentucky your first listen every single day. I want to remind everyone out there we are free and available on all platforms. If you are watching on YouTube, I would greatly appreciate it if you subscribe to the show. And if you are listening on podcast, I would also appreciate it if you subscribe there as well. Okay, let's go ahead and get into it. So Kentucky gets bludgeoned by the Alabama Crimson Tide. 89-74 is the final score. Cats cannot keep up. Despite I think a solid second half effort, they won the second half by a point. Almost sort of came back, cut the lead to 10 at one point, and then some crucial mistakes from the Wildcats down the stretch prevented them from actually making their way back into this one. First and foremost, I want to reiterate something I said on December 31st. I'm going to try and do my best to not be so stat heavy and actually discuss what we're watching with this team. So they lose 89-74. Obviously, there's some different statistics we might pull out here and there. And actually, we're going to use statistics to explain why I think Kentucky is going to be better over their next 6 or so SEC games here in just a little bit. But first, let's talk about what we actually watched. Here are my takeaways. Kentucky is not an elite basketball team this year. They're not. And you could honestly argue the same about last year's squad. And when you think about the way that last year went and the way that this year has gone, let's take away the matchups, the individuals, what makes up the games in terms of scouting report, how they actually, like in terms of statistically, how they actually, they ended up being. Last year, Kentucky had a lot of things go their way. And luck is not like a real thing, quote unquote, but you can statistically define it in a variety of ways. Kim Pom does. But when you think about the way that last year went, to come back against Duke and win, to come back against Gonzaga, to eventually beat, or to beat the eventual national champions, to beat Tennessee twice in some I think odds defying wins, to find all of these ways to sort of beat the odds, right? Kentucky got pretty lucky, all things considered. This season, they've had everything that could go their way go horribly wrong. Injuries have been a huge factor for this team. Stability at point guard has been a huge issue. The roster is not as smoothly constructed. In these tight games, they've not had the big moments go their way. They could have found a way to come back against Louisville, a bunch of turnovers late. They could have found a way to close out against North Carolina. Carolina hits shots, Kentucky doesn't. Horrible end to that game. You see Kentucky cut this down to 10, very much so a world where Kentucky does come back in this one. A lot of turnovers, a lot of mistakes, and frankly, not enough effort at the end of the game to close out. Kentucky struggling, and there's a little bit of luck involved here. There's a lot of different factors as to why Kentucky is just not very good, but they're not an elite team for 2 years in a row now. And the head coach is really struggling right now. Second point here, I think he is struggling to play the right players, but I think it's fixable. I don't think Mark Pope is an idiot. I think he knows how to coach a game of basketball. He is doing a lot of things incorrectly right now that I think that he would acknowledge, and I think that a lot of the fan base acknowledges, but it's fixable. You can solve those problems. Jaland Lowe is a very good player. Now, he might not be exactly what Kentucky needs, and we'll get to that in just a second, but I think he's a really good player. He had 20 plus in this game. I thought that he was really good in some big moments. I think he's a good player. Otega Owe had a hot and cold performance. Yes, he led the team in scoring, but he had several really bad mistakes when Kentucky was trying to come back. I said it on Twitter, and a lot of people pushed back on me, and I still want to stand on this. I thought shooting guard was the reason why Kentucky lost this game. Colin Chandler, horrible defensive effort on his part. For a 6'5" shooting guard, wing type, to not be able to play better defense than he did, it was embarrassing. And then Owe, who again scored, I think held Kentucky back in some really crucial moments down the stretch with some really bad passes down the floor, overly aggressive with trying to get the ball down the floor in transition. Some bad passes that led to turnovers that were not directly on him. He only logged like 2 turnovers on the game, but there was a lot of things that he did to cause things to sort of go out of sync on the offensive end that immediately led to Kentucky coughing the ball up. So yes, he scored. He had a really nice dunk. He had some moments, but I think that he had some really bad mistakes in the big clutch moments where Kentucky could have possibly come back, cut it to a single possession game late down the stretch. Kentucky struggled physically against a smaller team. This was a team that was battling some injuries in the front court. Alabama was. Bol Bolin did not play in this game. So Sherrell had to play a lot of minutes at the 5, and he played well. Alabama as a whole forced Kentucky to take shots away from the rim far too often. Kentucky is not a good passing team. Full stop. Nate Oates said this in the press conference, and you can see it if you want to go watch. The ball sticks to every player that touches it. They're not looking to get other people involved. Players are looking to score. That's a bad thing, especially for Mark Pope. JQ needs to be an Amari Williams, and he's not. Jaland Lowe is what he is. He's trying to score because teams are giving him good looks. The three-point defense is not good. It's just not. And it's cost Kentucky in a lot of games this year. Michigan State, Alabama, Louisville. It's cost. Gonzaga went 9 of 18. The three-point defense is not good, but it's fixable, and it's not the end of the world, I don't think. This is a blowout from that Kentucky. It's a road blowout against a very good Alabama team. And I think Kentucky, for the most part, can look better, especially in the near future. And they still have the chance to kind of start to turn this thing around and make some noise in the SEC. I'm going to explain to you why Kentucky should look better over their next 6 games here in just a moment. Before we do it, though, I'll tell you guys about our friends over at FanDuel. Fridays already feel different during basketball season, and FanDuel is making them even better. Every Friday night before the games tip off, FanDuel gives fans a new way to kick off the weekend with NBA Happy Hour. NBA Happy Hour is your official pregame, a limited time window where special offers drop right inside the FanDuel app before the action starts. Fridays from 6 to 7:30 Eastern have become appointment viewing with NBA Happy Hour. You can open the FanDuel app during Happy Hour. It always brings you something new, boosts, bonuses, surprises. So before tip-off, check the FanDuel app and see what's dropping during NBA Happy Hour every Friday from 6 to 7:30 p.m. Eastern. A little basketball, a little action, and a whole lot of Friday energy. That's NBA Happy Hour only on FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NBA. All right, continuing along here on today's episode of the show. Really appreciate you guys tuning in. Got to pause for water. As we move along here, talked about Kentucky's 89-74 loss to the Alabama Crimson Tide. And I think the consensus from this fan base is that the team is not good. I think that we need to rephrase how we talk about it. I'm trying to do a little bit better of a job being more positive this year. And we can rephrase what we're saying here. Kentucky is not to the fan base's standard. Kentucky is not to the standard of the expectations that were set for this team. They are not meeting expectations. They are failing. I would not say Kentucky is a bad team in terms of the entirety of Division I college basketball. I would say that they are not an elite team, floating somewhere between the top 50 to the top 16. I don't think Kentucky is a top 15 team. A lot of other people have said that as well. However, this doesn't mean Kentucky can't make a run in March. We've seen middling, quote unquote, Kentucky teams make runs in the postseason in the past. And on top of this, it doesn't mean Kentucky can't turn things around and at least look better in the short term. I think Kentucky's going to look better over the course of their next 6 games. I have faith that they have the chance to do it, and I have faith in them to do so. Why, you may ask? Let's take a look at what Kentucky has faced so far against power competition. Louisville, Michigan State, North Carolina, Gonzaga, St. John's, Indiana, Alabama. 3-point shooting, or 3-point defense has plagued them in most of these games. They've played, so far, a lot of good 3-point shooting teams, both in terms of efficiency, percentage, just raw percentage, and volume. Louisville, first in the country in 3-point attempt percentage. Louisville shoots 35.3%. Kentucky loses. Michigan State, 36.7% on the year. They win 11 of 22. North Carolina, 33.6%, right? They hit some tough shots late, and that was game. Gonzaga, 37.3%, despite a low volume. Alabama, third in the country in volume, 36.1%. All of these teams here don't necessarily share a same style, like Michigan State, Gonzaga are low volume, and then Louisville extremely high volume, but like a slightly above average. I wouldn't even say slightly above average. I would just say decent 3-point shooting percentage. High volume, low volume. Some of these teams are fast. Some of these teams are slow. It doesn't matter. Kentucky is not struggling against one specific kind of 3-point shooting team. But then you look at the individual performances in terms of what they're like, the amount of shots they're hitting. Louisville hits 13 threes. Michigan State hits 11. UNC hits 6, a couple of them clutch. Gonzaga goes 9 of 18. Alabama hits 15. The percentages they shot in those games, Louisville 32.5, Michigan State 50, UNC 30, Gonzaga 50, Alabama 39.5. So it's not necessarily volume or efficiency here. It's not necessarily volume at times. It's not necessarily efficiency at times. But look at the 2 wins. Indiana went 4 of 24. St. John's went 5 of 19. So the basic fact here is that Kentucky's 0-5 when their opponents shoot 30% or better. And they're 2-0 when their opponents shoot less than 27%, which is a pretty low number. And I would assume most teams are going to win if their opponents aren't knocking down shots from 3. But it's not necessarily about how many threes they take. It's about, again, how many they make in the important moments. So this doesn't necessarily mean Kentucky is a terrible 3-point defense because, again, some teams are beating them with volume. It doesn't necessarily mean Kentucky can't beat good shooting teams. They beat Indiana. They did beat St. John's, who is still a good 3-point shooting team. It also doesn't mean the season averages are meaningless. There's context here. All of this to say, 3-point shooting has been whether it be volume or efficiency, has been a guilty party in, I think, all of Kentucky's losses so far. In important moments or just across the board throughout the course of the game. Kentucky's margin for error is thin. That's what all of this means. When opponents shoot efficiently, Kentucky doesn't have enough insulation elsewhere to make this thing work because the offense isn't as good as it was a season ago. They can't win shootouts. And the defense, I mean, energy-wise, once they see a few shots going in from the opponent, it's clear this team goes flat. So why this matters now is the next 6 games. Look at these next 6 opponents. Missouri, 36.5% from 3, but they are 235th in volume. Mississippi State, 32.9% from 3, 169th in volume. LSU, 33.2%, 265th in volume. Tennessee, 34.8%, 289th in volume. 32.8% for Texas, 202nd in volume. And 34.6% for Ole Miss, 212th in volume. None of these teams are even like average volume 3-point shooting teams. None of them are. And almost only one of these teams, would I say, is an above average 3-point shooting team in Missouri. And you get that team at home coming up on Wednesday. None of these teams are elite from beyond the arc. There's no Alabama type team that has 5 million guards that can spray it. There's no Louisville team that has a bunch of 5-star freshmen or an insane backcourt to wing duo that's going to spray 40 times from 3. This doesn't guarantee wins for Kentucky, but I think it does raise Kentucky's competitive floor because Kentucky's not a great offensive team. They're not a good 3-point shooting team. Now that they get a chance to, over the course of these next 6 games, play teams that aren't good from in terms of efficiency or volume, it's going to raise the competitive floor. Now, yes, there are going to be a ton of different things that factor into these individual matchups, like one-on-one player matchups, offensive rebounding, turnovers, tempo. All these things are going to be important, of course. But I think one of the biggest guilty parties in all of Kentucky's losses is the 3-point defense. And it's going to kind of take, I think, a little bit of a step back here unless several of these teams just completely break trends. Which I wouldn't necessarily expect to happen, again, across the board. With Kentucky now playing with a little desperation at this point at 9-5. It's reasonable to expect some of these games, less of these games, to be decided by uncontrolled shooting variance. There's few, I think, even if you play okay on the offensive end of the floor, there's few of those nights that are being thrown out the window because the team's dropping 90 on you. Kentucky doesn't necessarily need these teams to shoot badly. They just need them to continue the trends that they have so far. The next stretch, I don't necessarily think will fix Kentucky's issues, right? But at the very least, it's going to give them a little bit more of a fair fight. And then also on top of this, I think that it's also going to help their mental and their energy and their effort to see for 6 straight games, you're not going to see a Louisville or an Alabama or a Michigan State or an Indiana type team where you're in constant scramble mode. You're having to hedge screens. You're having to go over everything. You're having to be uber aggressive in the way that you're trying to prevent the opponent from getting an open look from beyond the arc. Which, again, I think Kentucky should have some urgency, no duh, but there's going to be less stress. And so maybe building up some confidence and kind of working their way through these next few games where they can kind of give the effort and get the result that they want instead of give the effort, not get the result they want, and then crap out in the second half of games. And I also want to note here, the only 2 games that you play on the road here against LSU and Tennessee, I think, has their flaws and can be beaten. A very good team that can still be beaten. LSU, a team that you absolutely drubbed last year. You went and combined 3-1 against these 2 teams last year. And then your home games, Missouri, Miss State, Texas, Ole Miss. Those are all very winnable games. Only one of these teams is ranked higher than you in KenPom, and that's Tennessee, and it's only by 8 spots. You can turn things around a little bit here. You can be 15-5 heading into that road game against Vanderbilt. You can build momentum. And I think that the three-point shooting of these teams, the quality of these three-point shooting teams, could be a huge part of that. I think Kentucky might be okay. We'll see, but they might be okay. I want to wrap the show up by giving you an update on Sam Leavitt and then some other commitments for Kentucky through the transfer portal. Will Stein getting it together, obviously still with Oregon, but he's making it work. Before we do that, though, I'll tell you guys about our friends over at Game Time. There is nothing like college basketball season. Absolutely nothing. The packed arenas, the aura, the vibes, being there in the middle of it all, and the moments you'll remember forever, especially if you're a Kentucky fan. But actually getting tickets to some of these games can feel really frustrating. Long queues, logins, prices jumping at checkout. And that's why I only use Game Time. It gives the advantage back to the fans. It's the easiest way to unlock amazing college football tickets and experiences in just a few taps. I can open the Game Time app and look at upcoming college basketball games and find great seats very quickly. The app is incredibly easy to use. You can go from browsing to buying tickets like that. I've used it for NBA games. I've used it for MLB games. I've used it for college football. I've used it for college basketball. I've used it for concerts in the past as well. It is the only app I will ever use to go get a ticket for anything. They've got zone deals. You can pick the section. The app picks the seats. You save more money. Did that for an NBA game in Charlotte and loved it. The seats were incredible. You need to go take the guesswork, all of the guesswork out of buying any ticket you want, specifically for college basketball, though, of course, with Game Time. Use the Game Time app, download it today, create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Pause for water here real quick. Wrapping up today's episode of the show. Really appreciate you guys tuning in. Hopefully, I was able to make my case there for why Kentucky might turn this thing around. The summary is they've faced some teams that have shot the ball well against them, partially their fault, partially not. In this upcoming stretch, it's not going to be as much of a concern, especially if they play hard. And if they do play hard, I think that they will have a much more competitive time here over their next 6 games, because the quality of opponent also kind of takes a little bit of a dip as well. So at the very least, you can possibly get your mental right. Maybe don't fix everything, but you can get your mental right and win some game. Get a stretch of games where you win. Okay, let's talk a little bit about Sam Leavitt. So Sam Leavitt actually was supposed to go to Texas Tech. He was supposed to take a visit coming out of his time in Lexington. He was supposed to go to Texas Tech. He ended up staying longer than anticipated with Stein and the staff and staying here in town. And Texas Tech ends up getting a commitment from Cincinnati quarterback transfer Brendan Sorsby. So Texas Tech is out of the race for Sam Leavitt. Arizona State transfer, number 1 overall player in the transfer portal, quarterback that Kentucky is going to try and drop a bag for. Felt like for a couple of hours that Stein may have this thing locked up. Not necessarily reporting, but rumors saying, hey, this could be happening. And then LSU, who was also in competition for Cincinnati transfer Brendan Sorsby, says, hang on, we still need a quarterback. And now Lane Kiffin and the LSU Tigers have Leavitt scheduled for a visit on Tuesday. We'll see what happens. If he comes out clean, we'll see. And if he does, I still do really like Kentucky's chances with Leavitt, because they are willing to drop some serious money for him. Some very serious money. So that's the update on Leavitt. He's going to take a visit elsewhere. We'll see what happens. I'm still pretty excited to see what happens, though, because I think Kentucky's got a real shot. CJ Baxter, transfer running back from Texas. He's visiting Colorado. Malcolm Simmons, wide receiver transfer from Auburn. He is visiting Arkansas. Jordan Castell, a defensive back from Florida. He is visiting Monday. You're going to be watching this on Monday. Another player I need you to keep an eye on that Kentucky is going to try and get involved with, I would guess. Wilkin Formby, an offensive tackle from Alabama. Watch that space there. To wrap up the show, we got three commitments in just a few hours on Sunday evening. Antonio Oberry, an edge from Gardner-Webb. He had 39 pressures a season ago. Physical freak, 6'6", 240. Excited to see what he can do for this defense. Couldn't really find any tape on him at all. Hassan Sykes, a cornerback out of Western Carolina. Rangy guy, long wingspan. He had crystal balls to go to Illinois, and then he kind of pulled a rug over everybody's eyes, ended up committing to Kentucky. I believe he had taken a visit over the weekend. And then Ahmad Breaux, a defensive lineman from LSU. He has been there for 2 seasons, hasn't seen a ton of action, actually played in like 13 or 12 games on the D-line as a freshman for LSU. Ended up being freshman defensive player of the year for that team. They just gave him that honor. This past season, though, as a sophomore, 19 tackles, 2.5 tackles for loss, and half of a sack. If you want to go find the one like lone YouTube video of him online, it's very grainy and you can't really tell how involved he is in any of the plays, basically. But he, I think, also could be a really nice tool for the Wildcats, both, I think, on the interior and on the edge, just based on his size. He's like 6'3", 275 or something like that. So we've got an SEC transfer. We've got a cornerback transfer from WCU who has a lot of eligibility. And then Antonio Oberry, probably the player I'm most excited about here. Watch the space with Baxter. Watch the space with Simmons. Watch the space with Castell, who's going to be visiting. Wilkin Formby is somebody that Kentucky desperately needs. They need tackles. They need offensive linemen. If they can get Leavitt, my assumption is that there are going to be other players that want to get involved here as well. Again, just watch that space. Super excited to see what comes of this transfer portal cycle for Will Stein and the Cats, because it's clear they want to play serious ball because they're trying to spend some money. Let's see if they can get it done. I'd like to see them get it done. And that's going to do it for today's episode of the show. Really appreciate you guys tuning in. If you have not subscribed to the YouTube channel or the podcast feed, I would love it if you did so. If you want to join the Everydayer Club, $5 a month, $50 a year, you can get access to an exclusive Locked On Discord, ad-free episodes of this show on audio. You can click the link in the description. LockedOnKentucky.Supercast is where you can find that as well. You can follow me on Twitter at @LanceDawe_. Follow the show over on Instagram at Kentucky Podcast. Also follow the show over on Twitter at LockedOnUK. If you want to reach me, hit me on Twitter at LockedOnUK. That's where you're going to find me. All right, that's going to do it for tonight's episode. I hope you guys have a great rest of your evening. Go Cats. And of course, God bless. And hopefully, over these next few games, opponents don't shoot the lights out for either one reason or another.